48 hours. Now, returning to our top story, the Liberal Party says the split from the coalition was over the process of forming policy, not the policies themselves, while former Prime Minister John Howard has described the breakup as stupid. For more, New South Wales Liberal Party President Jason Falinski joins us now. Jason, thanks for joining us today. We've heard John Howard has said this is stupid. How would you categorise this split? What happened?
I think it's necessary, to be honest with you, Steph. The problem that the coalition has had for a long time is that we are finding it increasingly difficult to work together because the National Party has continued to make claim after claim after claim, and it's not necessarily being reasonable about the claims that it's making. And the result of that over 3 election cycles has been that the Liberal Party has gone from having roughly 30 seats in urban and city areas to having 1. And so I think this reset was incredibly necessary. And if the National Party needs to go it alone for a while to see how that's going to work, then that's the price we have to pay. But I think there's a massive opportunity here for the Liberal Party to reset, to refocus on our core capabilities, which is about structural reform, economic enablement, and empowering individuals to live the best lives that they possibly can.
We heard Senator James Paterson earlier saying that this will mean that the Liberals are now not only fighting Labor but also fighting the Nationals. What's your response to that?
I tend to disagree with my good friend James, and no doubt I'll get a text message from him after this. But I think that what the National Party has done is put itself in the shallow end of the pool. So what they will be doing is they will be fighting with the crossbench and the Teals for attention, and we can focus on the main game, which is about policies that make people's lives better off. Furthermore, and this is the real job that we have to start focusing on, which is holding the government to account for all the promises that they made at the election. So every time someone goes to the doctor and has to pull out their credit card, we need to make sure that those people are aware that that is a broken promise by Anthony Albanese. And they're the sorts of things that we need to actually focus on in the next 3 years, and developing policies that start to appeal to people on the basis of structural reform and economic empowerment.
Some Nationals backbenchers are pushing for reconciliation. Do you think that's likely anytime soon?
I don't see it as being something that is viable in the short term, but my great hope is that sometime before the next election that we do come back together in a united force to fight the Labor Party and the left generally, with an alternative vision that is based, once again, on making the lives of aspirational Australians both easier and better, and so that people can actually live the best lives possible. At the moment, that's not what we've been doing, and some of the demands that the National Party were trying to put into the coalition agreement were just not substantively viable. And I think, as James Paterson pointed out, this idea that you can be in shadow cabinet but not bound by shadow cabinet was quite crazy, frankly.
There's a lot of elements within a coalition agreement, like, for example, that there are no three-cornered contests. If this split continued on to the next election, does that mean the Liberals should move into national seats?
Yes, it does. And what we saw in Port Macquarie recently was that there are a lot of current National Party seats where the electorate is crying out for Liberal Party representation. So once again, I think this opens opportunities for us. And it's not, Mr. Howard, who was a very successful Prime Minister in the early part of this century. I think from that point of view, he had a coalition that worked, where both parties worked together to both get into government and stay in government. But I think that, of late, that's not quite how it's been working out.
Could this also, though, mean that the Nationals run in Liberal seats, and would you be concerned by that?
No, I wouldn't, and yes, it could. The National Party is free to make its own decisions. But, look, if you go back to 2016, the Liberal Party lost a lot of seats because we were unable to speak to a constituency that we needed to and wanted to. And the National Party kept saying, but we gained 1 seat. What they didn't tell everyone was that they gained that seat off the Liberal Party. So for many years, Steph, we have been fighting both the Labor Party, the Teals and the National Party. So, in some ways, this is just formalising what has been a lived reality for us for quite some time.
The Nationals had cited some key policy areas as sticking points in the negotiations. Would you normally see policy in the agreement? Is what the Nationals were asking for here unconventional?
It was unheard of, frankly. There was some talk when Malcolm Turnbull became Prime Minister that Barnaby Joyce wanted in the coalition agreement some guarantees around how same-sex marriage would be resolved. I don't know if that was the case or not, but putting policy in the coalition agreement is unheard of otherwise and was really a breach of trust.
So if this is unheard of, why do you believe the Nationals have split away then? Was this about leadership or the future of their party? What's your take on it?
Steph, you really have to ask them. I find it quite curious what they've done. As I've been trying to outline just for the last few minutes, I think the upside for the outcome of this for the Liberal Party is all upside. It's difficult for me to see what the upside is for the National Party. And, maybe some time apart is precisely what both parties needed to get perspective on how the coalition has been working over the last few decades.
Susan Lee has said the Nationals wouldn't sign up to the usual rules of cabinet solidarity. Do you think that's because the Nationals wanted to speak out against climate issues?
I don't know why they wanted to do that. I mean, in reality, the truth is that that's what they've been doing already for quite some time. So, I was in Parliament when Scott Morrison delivered the historic decision to agree to net zero. That impact of that was huge. But the minute he delivered it, and he delivered that by also essentially guaranteeing a lot of public funds for the National Party and National Party seats, the National Party turned around and derided the policy publicly. They made fun of it and, they openly said, well, we got billions of dollars, but, is this ever going to happen? The impact of that was it made their coalition partners, the Liberals, look pretty silly and made it look like it wasn't a real deal and made it look like we weren't serious about climate change. And it really did undermine us in what are now Teal seats. And whatever their reason for not wanting to be bound by shadow cabinet is a bit like wanting to have your cake and eat it too.
Getting into the nitty-gritty, if we look ahead to the next election, what would this mean for joint Senate tickets? Obviously, speaking from a New South Wales perspective, what would this mean? Would the Liberals put Nationals further down the ticket?
Well, it means that we would run our own separate tickets. And of course, it also means a severing of the financial public funding arrangements as well, which the National Party have done very well out of. So ultimately what would happen is that the Liberal Party will run its own Senate ticket in New South Wales. The Liberal Party is almost guaranteed of getting 2 Senate seats up. And I suppose we would be fighting the National Party for the 3rd seat. But on top of all of that, the funding arrangements would see the Liberal Party much better off if it takes all the public funding for all the votes that it gets.
Jason, you've said that you think this will be damaging for the National Party, but do you think it could also be damaging for the Liberals the longer it continues?
Look, it depends what we do with this, Steph. It's a really good question. But as I say, I think it opens a huge amount of opportunities for the Liberal Party to refocus on constituencies that are interested in getting ahead, that are aspirational, that are looking for economic opportunities. To use a less sort of prosaic analogy, the people who want us to grow the cake, not keep cutting it up. And I think this gives us that opportunity to do that. I think I hope that we seize it. I know that there are a huge number of Australians out there who are waiting to hear, waiting for a political party to express those values and those principles of lower tax, smaller government, better services, people being able to live their lives as they see fit and to move on. And, government as an enabler, not as an enforcer. And I think the Liberal Party is the party that can deliver that both in real and substantive terms.
Jason Falinski, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for taking the time to dissect this with us today on Afternoon Briefing.
Really appreciate your time, Steph. Thank you.
And that's afternoon